Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between social housing and supported living because we've had a few of these questions and thought I'd just get Dan on Zoom to really explain the clear difference. So Dan, I think you've made a presentation to make it pretty clear on what our viewer, by the end of it, they can have a good understanding of, yeah, that's that and that's that.
Yeah, exactly. So I've done a bit of a slideshow just to highlight some of the differences. So social housing versus supported living. So understanding the differences and the opportunities. So we're going to cover what is rent-to-rent social housing, why supported living is the main focus, or my main focus at least, and then the purpose of this presentation, which is what it says on the tin essentially. What are the differences? Okay, so rent-to-rent social housing is where we lease a property from a landlord and then we act as the middleman and we lease it on to one of our providers or our clients at this point. So what we get you to do on the mentorship is focus purely on building a client list of different providers that are willing to work with you, that they're actively searching for properties to set up new services. Okay, so whether they house homeless people, whether they house people with disabilities, whether they house children out of care, whether it's for ex-offenders that are leaving prison and they need somewhere to stay in their interim. So these are all, there's loads of different, many providers. And we're going to dig into a bit of that and what's the difference between sort of standalone social housing and the difference between supported living. The main focus on supported living for myself is just because that's kind of the avenue I ended up going down, built a lot of connections there and realized the opportunities there. Oftentimes get additional funding, so it's easier to make these back-to-back lease situations work as opposed to with normal social housing, which is very much based around affordability, as we'll see in the next slide. So what is social housing? So it's affordable housing for people in need. Okay, so people that can't afford the like normal market value rent, and a lot of it is managed by the local authorities, right? So they have something called the LHA rate, which is the local housing allowance, and typically this is what they'll pay for people that are on a list that are looking for affordable housing. Okay, so the way that will work, they'll have to apply for these housing and then they'll be on a waiting list till something comes available. And the local authorities, they're always looking for landlords that are from the private sector that are willing to lease their properties to these people on what they call the local housing allowance, which is oftentimes below market value. Okay, the councils will also purchase homes themselves. They'll have incentives which you'll see in their annual reports and budgeting where they say they need to build a certain amount of affordable housing in the next 5 years, which very rarely happens. There's always too much demand outstripping supply. There is no support sort of element. This is where social housing kind of differs to supported living, is that these are people that just need affordable housing essentially. They can move in, they may have jobs, they may just be low income, low earners, and there will be no sort of care element in the property. When it comes to rent, there are a few options how you can use social housing. It can still be a viable strategy. It's just being able to secure the properties from the landlords at a cheaper rent or doing management, right? So you're just managing the property on behalf of the landlord and you can collect like a monthly commission, right? So the provider or the council would sign a lease directly with the landlord and you'd be the managing agent, so you would manage the tenant just like a normal letting agent essentially. So council tenants, so when you call up the council and see if they're looking for properties, a lot of the time you'll speak to somebody in the homelessness department. That's good because a lot of people that say they're getting evicted from the private rented sector, they will or they get served a Section 21, which is a no-fault eviction, which a lot of landlords are doing now. They're worried about the renters reform coming in. A lot of them are selling up, so they're asking their tenants to leave, which is creating more demand in the market. The people, when you get served a Section 21, there will be advice on there to contact the local authority. So you contact them, they basically tell you to stay in the house as long as possible so they can put you on a list to find suitable accommodation, so social housing, affordable rents. So you ring up the council and they'll try and get you to basically, if you say I've got some properties available, they'll be like, great, we've got loads of people that are looking. We want you to put them in there on ASTs, which is an assured short hold tenancy, and that essentially is just how you would let to a normal. So if you were letting a room to a normal tenant, that's what you'd put them on an AST. They'll be wanting to pay LHA rates. And what you want to be trying to do is ask if they'd be willing to pay top ups. So this is where essentially the council will pay you the LHA rate, but then you'll also be able to get a top up from the people that are living in there. off of their universal credit. And this will allow you to bump the rent up to market value, essentially. This isn't always possible, and it's best to talk to the council if they will allow for top-ups, because really their universal credit shouldn't be paying to that should be paying towards, lifestyle, food, things like that, as opposed to being any sort of housing benefit. Oftentimes, if you do move one of these people into your property, so this can be great for rooms as well. If you've got like a HMO, rent to HMO, and you want to fill your rooms, you can go down this avenue, try and get the top up, and then they also offer incentives. So if you were to rent one of your rooms or your property to a council tenant, oftentimes they can pay you an upfront payment, which can be as high as £2,000 in some cases. Every council is sort of different to how much they'll pay for an incentive, but this can be a good way to make some initial upfront money as well. They also will offer leasing, where the council will actually manage the property as well. So effectively, they'll come in, you'll lease the property directly to them, and then they'll put their own tenants in, and they'll manage that tenancy throughout the agreement. So this could be like 2 years that they take the property from you, sort of hands-free. Obviously, you're still going to want to get in there, make sure that they're taking care of the property and reporting any issues back to the council if you don't feel like they're treating the property right. And then the one thing that we would kind of be more inclined to do, obviously, as business owners trying to make some decent margins, is temporary accommodation. This is where you would essentially lease a property from a landlord, and then you would contact the council and see well, at first you need to establish if they've got demand for temporary accommodation, and they're offering this nightly rate essentially. So this is where they'll pay you a certain amount per night per room that you have in a property, and these will be for people that are fleeing domestic abuse or something like that. They're at serious risk of being homeless, and they need somewhere to stay temporarily before the council can find them something like this up here, so where they can find a more longer term property where they can pay the LHA rate, and it's more sustainable and affordable for them, right? So at the moment there's thousands of people in like hotels and things like that, families in hotels. It's just not a suitable accommodation. So what they need to be doing is finding small family homes or self-contained units, say 2-bed units, where these people can live more comfortably as a family, right? Because if you're in a hotel with children and things like that, it's just not practical, right? You may have a small kitchenette or things like that, but you don't have like cooking facilities and things like that. So this is why they turn to temporary accommodation. Obviously, it can be very profitable, but it is higher risk, because essentially the council can give you notice at the drop of a hat. They can say this family no longer needs this, and then they'll leave within a week, and then you've got a void. Then you need to get somebody else in. So there is high demand for this, so you would hope that the council would then pass you somebody else, and then you would move them in, and then you wouldn't have so much of a void. But there are cases where the council just stop doing temporary accommodation. Maybe they've just finished development on one of their like housing blocks, then the property would be left empty, and you would need to find an alternative to fill it. So this could be a good one for people who already do Airbnb, because this is
the only downside to it is, if it was 100% occupied, it's only £1,800 revenue at £60 a night. So
yeah,
minus the rent and expenses, there's not a lot of profit. So
in some cases the council will actually cover the bills as well.
okay, that's quite good.
Pay the bills, so there can be good margins on it in that respect. But yeah, you're right. If you're down to have to pay the bills as well, oftentimes they may pay a higher slightly room rent. But it's all about negotiating with the council to try and lift that up. But definitely a higher risk strategy. So again, income isn't guaranteed. Short notice to vacate, you must treat it like the service accommodation model, essentially, account for some sort of voids there. High risk, but potentially high reward as well. You need to contact the council, see if they're doing temporary accommodation, if they're offering the nightly rate first. And if they are, then you can go out and you can start to look for properties that meet their criteria of what it is that they're looking for, whether they're looking for 2-bed houses, 3 beds, self-contained flats, that sort of thing. And then you would go away and then you would look for, knowing the nightly rate that you would be able to achieve for that, so then you can do all of your figures before you put it to them. Oftentimes then you'd submit a property, they would come out, they would view it, they would do an inspection, make sure it's up to the standard that they require. And then
let's say I lived in Birmingham. Who do I contact first? Do I just go on Birmingham City Council and call the main number?
Yeah, exactly. You would call, you would look on their website first. You would try to get in contact with their homeless department, and then speak to somebody in the homeless department about temporary accommodation, and then they'll pass you forward to the temporary accommodation department, and then you would speak to somebody there. So yeah, that's that one. That's probably the better, unless you own the property, or you're doing like a rent to HMO and you'd like to put council tenants in there. But what I would say is you want to keep it solely for that. You don't want to be mixing professionals in with council tenants and things like that. And you do get a choice. Like, they will send you like the profile of the person and everything like that. You'll be able to meet them at a viewing and make sure that you feel comfortable with them before moving on. And if you do allow for the top ups, you can essentially get a tenant that's paying market rate and potentially an incentive as well, which gives it a good boost. So it is definitely an option to explore.
Do the council, if the tenant like smashes up the place, if they're a violent person, they punch the doors, would the council pay for the repairs?
No,
Okay.
not if you're putting them in on ASTs. They essentially be just a normal tenant then. As soon as they're in, as soon as that they become your tenant, the council will essentially just be hands off then. Yeah. There are certain cases where I believe you can see if the council will guarantee the rent. There's certain schemes that do run. I know Coventry does it. They will essentially guarantee the tenant's rent. So it is guaranteed rent, but still they're not going to be liable for like damages and things
Yeah,
like
so
that.
it just comes down to doing the standard referencing, and tenants are go on referencing and go with your gut at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. You always got to listen to your gut when you're doing
Yeah.
viewings with tenants. Yeah, 100%. So the primary goal of social housing is to provide affordable housing. The focus is on general needs, so roof over our heads. It's not built-in care or support systems in place. Okay, so that's where the two sort of vary. So what is supported living then? So it's housing plus tailored support services. So there is a care element that goes on in the house. The whole purpose is to sort of enable independent living. It's not strictly social housing, but is often linked, and we kind of use it as an umbrella term, hence why our course is called Rent to Social Housing, because it does encompass supported living as well. It's just supported living is not purely social housing. A lot of the times they're funded through, they get a care package, so they have what you call service users in the property, and they will get allocated a certain amount of these care packages and different benefits depending on the complexity of their situation.
What do you mean by service users?
So service users essentially, so a supported living company would hire lease your property, and then they would put in their service users, which are people with disabilities or mental health or things like that, right? These are the supported living company's tenants, if you will, the people that require the support. So it's not capped by the local housing allowance. Oftentimes they get what they call exempt rents, which can be market or above market rents. Above market rents are possible. Support providers pay through care packages and additional benefits. So they have access to exempt rents, like I said. So they have like a housing benefit. The care company themselves get paid a certain amount to provide the care hours for, their employees, the carers that are going in and taking care of these people and offering support. And that all goes into a sort of their funding to be able to pay the rent essentially. So the types of different supported living. So they're care leavers, so 16 to 21. Sometimes this goes up to 24. Children's homes, people with learning disabilities, mental health, autism, physical disabilities where they require wheelchair access, so things like bungalows and things like that.
So hang on a minute. People that comment on most of my content saying you guys are ruining the housing market, it's very unethical.
Yeah.
You're bottom feeders, you guys provide no value, and that's the type of people we're helping.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
Funny that.
Yeah, and it's a funny one, isn't it? Because obviously we are making money off of it, and I can see how people have
Yeah,
that
but so is the
concern.
supported living company. They're a business. They'll be making money from doing this business.
Exactly that, yeah. And our whole aim is to find these people. So there's huge waiting lists, right, of service users looking for suitable accommodation. And these companies, what we're trying to do is bring these supported living companies the highest quality properties that we can find for them.
Quickly talk us through, because I've never forgotten this. That house, that amazing house that we've done a YouTube tour video on, when you showed the provider and was it the young adults or young children around the house, and they were running around, they were loving it.
It was like a 7-bed HMO. It was being used as like a holiday let, so it was really high spec, en suites in every room. It was a gorgeous house. And yeah, so we
If you guys want to see the tour of that, click here.
yeah, go and have a look. But yeah, we did a couple of viewings there when the provider wanted to bring the service users around. So the people that would actually they'd be moving into the property, because oftentimes there needs to be a bit of a transition. So they'll be in an existing property, which maybe is no longer suitable for their needs, or it's getting a bit tired and run down. The landlord's not keeping it up. They come in, showed them the property that we were sourcing for them, and they absolutely fell in love with it. And it was really heartwarming to see the people that would actually be moving in there, and how this would improve their quality of life, the facilities and everything that they had. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a proper fulfilling job, essentially, isn't it?
yeah, Yeah, 100%, mate. It's very different to showing just a normal HMO tenant around, you
Yeah.
know. Very different. Okay, and then the next one. So conclusion. So this is only short, just a high level overview, guys, and this is all we need to know. You don't need to become a social housing expert. You don't need to learn about the ins and outs of how it works. You just need to have a high level understanding of it, right? Because you will learn as you go along, as you build connections with different providers. But essentially, that's not our job, right? We're not becoming supported living companies or carers or anything like that, right? We are filling the gap between them trying to find suitable properties. That's all our job is to do, right? And connect the dots. And that's where we fit in so nicely. I was speaking to a provider the other day on the phone because we've just leased one of our properties to her. They're settling in now. They've moved some children in and it's working well. She said it's got a really nice homely feel. She said, "How did you get into this? This is such a brilliant idea. I hate dealing with our landlords. Like, I just want to come to one person like yourself where I can tell you exactly what it is that I need and have demand for. You can go out, you can find and secure it for us." So we've secured 3 properties for this provider now. And she's just like, "I love dealing with you guys. It's so easy. If there's any issues, I know who to come to. I know you're going to be responsive. I'm not going to have to wait on a landlord," or, she just loves the fact that we are that bridge between the landlord. So it was really nice to get that feedback directly
Yeah, I
from
bet.
our providers. So social housing, again, it's a affordability focus, right? LHA rates, just a roof over the head. That's what it is. Supported living is support and the encouragement and assistance to independence. Rent to social housing includes both, but supported living offers greater potential in regards to making money because they get access to these exempt rents and they can pay market value or above. Okay, a lot of the supported living providers as well will have like a maintenance team and they'll take care of internal maintenances and things like that. So that's a cost saving. It's also because they're putting vulnerable people in these properties, they have to make sure that they're to a good standard. Any sort of repair issues get sorted very quickly and kept on top of. So you know that the property is being well looked after. Choose based on your strategy and risk tolerance. So this comes down to what we were talking about, putting council tenants in or doing the temporary accommodation with the council. You have to account for these potential voids, potential damages that may come along with some council tenants. Not all. The majority of people that are seeking accommodation through the council usually are just in a tough spot. They've been made evicted. They've had a Section 21. They're in desperate need of finding a property. Oftentimes they're working and things like that. It's not risky so much in that regard, but with the voids and you don't always know who you're putting in your property. Whereas with the supported living, you can really reference the company. You can see if they've got. You can have a look at their other properties to make sure it's in a good condition. You can check their financials. You know it's going to be for a long-term lease because they're signing 3 to 5 years. They're going to take care of internal maintenance. They can pay market value or more in most cases. So it's a more secure, hands-off situation essentially. So that's why I prefer it. And as me and Kenny just discussed, then it's very rewarding as well, providing a home for for these type of people that really, they do need it.
So hopefully you guys found value in that. So Dan, how would they, if they want to get started in this strategy, they've been looking into it, how do they find us? Where do they go? What should they do?
Yeah, I would say just go watch more videos from me and Kenny on his channel. And if it's something of interest, something that piques your interest, something you'd like to get into, you can click the link below in the comments.
And don't forget, go to kennypittman.com. If you're interested in training with me and Dan on the mentorship, then go to kennypittman.com, go to the mentorship tab, and there's loads of information on the mentorship and what you get. So be sure to check that out. Click the links in the description. Follow Dan on socials, on Instagram. Follow us. Join Rise Up Rent to Rent group on Facebook. Just follow us everywhere because this is just one platform. We're very active on Facebook, right? In the Rent to Rent group, we do live videos, post content, testimonials of students getting success. So yeah, be sure to click those links. If you have any questions at all, or this confused you in slightly, or you have a question, leave the comments below. Any questions at all, leave them below, and then we'll answer them in the next Q&A. Thanks, guys. See you on the next one.
See you guys.